When Song Jiao saw the protagonist's new form, he did not move right away. He quietly examined him from head to toe, then said in a cold voice that his condition was not bad. But the moment the protagonist rushed forward and tried to slash at him, Song Jiao did not retreat even half a step. With a simple motion, he caught the incoming strike in one hand, as if the force behind it carried no weight at all. No matter how many punches and savage blows rained down, to Song Jiao they felt like nothing more than a faint breeze. In the next instant, he drove a powerful kick into the protagonist's body. The impact sent him flying before he crashed into the distance, yet the clash did not end there. Song Jiao chased after him through the air, struck again, and seized him by the head with an iron grip. In a mocking tone, he told him to look at the gap between them and think carefully about whether he could ever cross the abyss of strength that separated them. Was that the power he had boasted about so proudly? The protagonist's eyes burned crimson as he shouted that he would kill Song Jiao. Before he could recover, he was slammed violently into the ground. Without a trace of emotion, Song Jiao remarked that it was a waste of potential. His foundation was unstable and still required harsh tempering. At that moment, a fierce roar echoed from the sky. A massive dragon descended at incredible speed, forcing its way into the battlefield. The wind burst outward from its arrival. Song Jiao stepped back, and Jinying was nearly swept into the scattered rocks. The enormous creature landed with a heavy impact, the ground trembling beneath it. It stood before the fallen protagonist, facing Song Jiao as if ready to shield him from the next move. Song Jiao praised the dragon's remarkable control and said it was exactly the kind he had been searching for. Following the mental imprint to that small town had not been in vain. Extending his hand, he calmly asked whether the person lying behind it truly mattered. According to him, only the two of them were qualified to step into a new world. Xiao Shui shouted angrily for him to stop and demanded to know who he was calling the same kind. Song Jiao replied that the trash needed cheap devices just to control aberrations and could not even reach the edge of his shadow. The gap between them was vast, he said, and it could not be bridged by anger or emotion. As the tension intensified, Zhang Jin hid behind a large rock. Secretly observing Xiao Shui, he thought about how she had appeared to ruin his and Tang Yi's plan. If those two fought, all the better. If both were severely wounded, even better. He would wait until both sides were weakened before making his move. He activated the enhanced device embedded in his chest. It was more effective than anti-collapse capsules against crimson fog erosion, though the cost to his body was heavy. In his eyes, Mr. Hong's inventions were admirable. As long as he could take revenge, the price did not matter. He approached the behemoth-class aberration and pressed his palm against it. Using corrosive absorption, he began draining the crimson energy, a power capable of dissolving biological tissue and energy alike. Meanwhile, Song Jiao said with a faint smile that such perfect power was shackled by narrow emotions and therefore wasted. Then he turned away. As he walked off, he coldly remarked that one day she would understand the difference between them and the humans of the past. After Song Jiao completely left, Xiao Shui stepped down from behind the dragon and slowly approached her brother. She knelt beside him and softly apologized for arriving late. Tears filled her eyes as she admitted she was afraid he would hate her upon seeing what she had become. She was even more afraid she might lose control of her power and hurt him herself. Gently touching his cheek, she whispered that he should forget her and stop looking for her. Then she stood and said she had one last thing to give before leaving. She walked toward the behemoth-class aberration where Zhang Jin was still absorbing crimson energy and shouted at him to leave. Instead of retreating, Zhang Jin boldly asked if she planned to face him alone. In his mind, this was the moment he had been waiting for. Devouring someone strong would be far faster than slaughtering useless soldiers. He grinned, convinced that the protagonist's time had come. He stepped toward the fallen protagonist, gathering surging crimson energy in his hands to strike. Before he could release the attack, Xiao Shui appeared in front of him and delivered a sudden, crushing kick to his head. As Zhang Jin lay on the ground, Xiao Shui warned him loudly that if he were not working for Green Vine, she would have killed him long ago. She told him never to touch the protagonist again. If he dared to repeat it, she would tear him into 1,000 pieces. Then she picked up the red crystal and slowly walked away. Lying on the ground, Zhang Jin thought bitterly about how the power he had painstakingly accumulated had been taken so easily. Silently, he swore that one day he would make the siblings pay 100-fold. Xiao Shui placed the red crystal into her brother's hand and carefully told him to be more cautious in the future. Then she leapt back onto the dragon. Before it ascended into the sky, she turned once more to look at him as the enormous creature rose higher and higher. Some time later, she landed in a place where several officials were waiting. They greeted her as Lord Beastmaster and apologized for arriving too late to assist in the battle. Meanwhile, the protagonist slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he remembered was his sister, and he called her name in his heart. A voice called out to him, and he fully awakened. Jin Ying rushed over, nearly in tears and filled with concern, asking if he was all right and begging him to recover quickly. He smiled faintly and assured her he was fine and that she should not worry. They were in the medical room, he said lightly, joking that it had practically become his second home. Jin Ying said she had been afraid she would be left alone in the future. Hearing that, the protagonist abruptly sat up and asked with urgency where Song Rui was and how he was doing. Jin Ying's expression darkened. In a trembling voice, she told him that Song Rui was gone. At those words, the protagonist froze. A slow burning fury ignited in his eyes, and the air around him grew heavy.